Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast. We are in the thick of the winter period, basically now. It is 7th of November and very much firmly concentrating on the jumps. We've got excellent action at Aintree and also Wincanton that we're going to cover. And with the Breeders' Cup no longer, the Melbourne Cup is gone. There is no excuses but to get TC firmly in the jumps mix, and hopefully Ross will help guide us through, ease us back in to the jump season proper. And with the jumps in this vein of form, we've got the Grand National fences we're even going to be using this weekend at Aintree. So that's how much we're focusing on the national hunt scene. With that in mind, the Great Sefton Handicap Chase will be our feature, and then we have the Badger Beer Handicap Chase at Wincanton. Let's start off with the Great Sefton Handicap Chase, as we've got a good field. 13 lining up for this race. We'll take you through the prices quickly from SBK. King Turgeon is 5-1. We've got Sure Touch at 11-2. Percussion, last year's runner-up, is 6-1. Idalco Binu is 13-2. Ferrero Bamboo, who's third in this last year, is 7-1, as is Late Night Pass, last seen in the Grand National, at 10-1. Bigger the rest of them, but quite evenly matched, really. Not a huge amount separating them, and these prices probably will change. This is an SBK 25% winnings boost race, a lot on offer here. And I suppose it makes you think, Ross, when you're looking at these races, knowing fresh in our mind, flat racing, that races like this, there's a huge amount of value on offer. 5-1 the field for a race of this. It is very niche, we know that, but we've got a lot of banging form horses in this, especially those at the top of the market, coming off the back of wins and recent wins. So they're fit enough, as opposed to some of them who've come off a bit of a break.
Yeah, you've got a mixture of horses with really good course form and horses with really good recent form. So I think King of Turgeon at the head of the market, probably should start with him. He looked a revelation at Chepstow last time. That was over a bit of a trip, 3 miles, 2 furlongs. He went up £11 for that win, and that win came after first-time win surgery. So he's up £11. He's effectively £2 well in here because he carries a £7 penalty, but that would take him to £2 out of the weight. So he's, off a £9 higher mark effectively here, which you would think gives him every chance. But just looking back through his form, I mean, that run was an anomaly, which I'm happy to mark down to the fact that he can breathe better now, so that's helped him. But I'm not sure that there's anything in his form that suggests he wants a trip over this, this trip on this ground. They're going to go quick enough for all that it's a staying chase, I suppose. So it just wasn't really for me. For all, I do like Jack Tudor over these fences. He rides in a really nice rhythm, and I think that's still, yes, the jumping test has changed, but I still think jockeys that can ride in a rhythm are worth a bit round here. Sure Touch is the other one that comes in really good form. Won his last 4. Including the Summer Plate at Market Raisin last time. He's up £6 for that. He's getting quite high in the weights now. He's £22 higher than that when that winning streak started. Could see the appeal of him. He's going to like the ground, but I just was looking for a horse a little bit better handicap. Percussion now are getting into the horses with course form. 4 completions from 4 efforts round here, and all of them seeing him inside the top 3 in both this and the Beecher Chase. But he's never won over these fences, and I just wonder, as he's getting a little bit older, whether this test on this ground is just going to be a bit sharp. I just would like to have seen softer ground for him. He might be one for the Beecher Chase later on in the season. Gabriotto tried the fences in the Fox Hunters. I don't think he really took to them. He made some fiddly errors before he eventually got rid of his jockey at the Canal Turn, unseated there. Could put a line through him. The last one with real course form that's of interest is Late Night Pass. 4 completions from 4 efforts. Won the Fox Hunters, 2nd in the Fox Hunters, 4th in the Fox Hunters, then finished 12th in the National Ways. Stamina just gave way over that 4 mile 2 trip. So the drop back in trip is a positive, but I think they're going from sort of the sublime to the ridiculous, if you like. I think this is going to be a bit sharp at 11 years of age. His best form was in the cross-country chase over 3.5 miles. I want to give a mention to Harper's Brook, just because I think he's going to be a great watch, because he's a bit mad. I'd question his stamina, and I'd also question what Keelan Woods is going to do if he's in there with a chance, how he gets from the last to the elbow to the finishing line. I mean, if he's there, give it a good watch, because if he wins, whatever he does, it'll be ride of the season. But the horse that came down is Ferrero Bamboo's got good course form. He's jumped round here twice. Like you say, he was 3rd last year off a mark of 133. He was 3 lengths behind Percussion, gets a £4 pull at the weights. And I think on that occasion, the heavy ground, first time up, for all that he's effective on heavy ground, probably just took him into the red on his stamina and he weakened in the closing stages. I see this ground suiting him better. After that run, he had really good form in handicap chases. He was second at Newbury, trying to give £4 to the Can-Do Kid. He was beaten 2 lengths. The Can-Do Kid's now rated 145. He was then third in the December Gold Cup off 136 at Cheltenham. That was a good piece of form. Then went back to Cheltenham on New Year's Day, finished just behind, 7 lengths behind Shake 'em Up Harry off level weights. Shake 'em Up Harry's now 149 rated. His form tailed off after that, but so did his yard form. He's £3 lower, but crucially, last year he carried 11 stone 2. This year he carries just 10 stone 5. He's going to feel like he's running loose. The ground is livelier. I think that's going to suit him. Yes, we associate his trainer Venetia Williams with slower ground horses, but Master bolted up at Ascot last week on quick ground. She clearly can have them ready. She only had 4 runners, 1 winner, 1 has finished second. I just think he's really nicely handicapped. He'll like the ground. He'll take to the fences. We know that. So thought 7-1 with SBK was a decent price.
Yeah, as you say, Venetia Williams' first winner since May on the weekend. I bet she hasn't had any runners throughout the summer, so it is an early start for her. Ferrero Bamboo for Ross, just a quick question, and you touched on it with a couple of these horses. I'm looking at them. King Turgeon, second run since Wind Surgery. We've got Harper's Brook, who you mentioned, first run for Dan Skelton, formerly with Ben Pauling. He's had Wind Surgery. Outlaw Peters has his second bout of Wind Surgery for Paul Nicholls, and also Late Night Pass, Wind Surgery as well. Horses at varying stages of their career. Some of them have had their second bout, some of them their first. What do you see in that when you see a horse has had Wind Surgery, regardless of when it's coming around?
It started to make me a bit uncomfortable, Jess. Like, you read some of these stable tours, and I sort of read them just for amusement purposes, really. I don't think you can take too much from them. But particularly Paul Nicholls, you go through them, nearly every other horse had Wind Surgery. And what I don't like is, he wasn't showing us what we hoped. So we've given him Wind Surgery in the hope that's going to improve him. And just don't like that as a sort of standpoint. If there's evidence to suggest they need their wind improving, then improve it. I'd point out Brave Man's Game ran last time in the Charlie Hall. That was his third Wind Surgery. I would argue that hasn't improved him at all. It didn't seem to help him finish off his race. The old adage is that the second time up is the time to catch them after the Wind Surgery, because you've seen whether they've shown some improvement. So whereas it used to be maybe 5 or 6 years ago a bit of a guide, if you spotted one that had Wind Surgery that maybe you wanted to latch onto it, I think now they're so 10 a penny that they're done for fairly trivial reasons and sort of more in hope than expectation. So I don't put an awful lot of weight on it, to be honest.
Okay, interesting insight, of course. So you can see a few of them in this race that are coming off the back of that and coming off the back of breaks, which TC is having. Coming off a bit of a break, we're easing you back in. Like some of these horses, well, you might need the run, or is there something that you've been following privately for a while?
Oh, Jess, I'm carrying a lot of condition. I am big and burly, fat, some may say. Yeah, I'm not ready for jumps racing already, I have to say. Plus, what are we doing? Easing me back in with the Grand Sefton and the Badger Beer. 2 impossible races. Yeah, thanks for that. And also, I have to say, it wasn't a good start to the podcast because the first horse that Ross mentioned, King Turgeon, we was negative about. Well, that's my selection in the race, King Turgeon. So, I mean, take my pick. With a token of maybe Tom isn't ready for the jump season just yet. Look, this is a cracking race on paper. I can't really provide too much more than Ross has already said. I will say that I don't love Persuasion. I know you're going to be a pro Persuasion in a minute, Jess, but won 3 races off 108, 108 and 117. Yes, he's been consistent since, but he's still £10 higher than that winning mark. And he'll probably be placed, but he always finds 1 too good. So from an each way perspective at a price, maybe Persuasion is the way to go. But from my perspective, he was favourite when I looked at the race. Obviously not now. And I didn't like him from a win perspective. Ferrero Bamboo was the last off my shortlist, I have to admit, for reasons that Ross said, and he just goes very well fresh. But I'm going to put up King Turgeon. I thought he jumped supremely well at Chepstow, and that was the one big tick in the box. Yes, the trip is an issue. He did win over a lot further. And if you go back in his form cycle, when he runs over 2.5 or around that, he tends to lose his position at a crucial stage. But I'm just hoping that Wind Surgery, with him, it may be important because it was the first time. I'm hoping that has really unlocked the new King Turgeon. He's only a 6-year-old, seems to be improving, and he is well treated, as Ross says. So he's going to be my pick. But yeah, I can't say I'm overly confident.
That's fair enough. And as I said, we'll ease you in. I'm sort of on the same ilk, trying to keep my mind focused on this racing when you've got so much good international flat racing that's still around, and there's flat action as we know the all weather will continue this winter period. But I do like, and it is, we'll forgive you. It's percussion, not persuasion, but that's okay.
Oh.
As you say, you're carrying on a bit of a condition. Percussion. Look, for all those reasons, there's reasons why you can be negative on him. He's such a nearly horse, just manages to hit the crossbar. But normally at all right prices, you wouldn't want him any shorter than 6-1, which he is now. He ran over 3 mile 2 last time at Uttoxeter, where he was beaten by Hang In There, who for a long way ran a really big race in the Charlie Hall on Saturday. So you have to think that form is okay. But as I said, that was over 3 mile 2. They play up with his trip all the time, and they try and extend him out, but I do think this distance of 2 mile 5 is possibly at his best. Adam Wedge gets on with him very well. He spent such a long portion of last season, was it, injured and on the sideline. So he was ridden by a mixture of jockeys. He's only, I think it's £1 higher than what he was, or was it £1 lower? I think it's £1 lower than what he was this time last year when he ran in the race. So I just think that he's not a terrible shot here in a race where you really need to be finding horses, I believe, that have got that little bit of fitness on their side. And the trainer had a nice winner the other day, but hasn't had a huge amount of runners as well. So Percussion in the Great Sefton Handicap Chase, which is 240 at Aintree. As we say, a 25% winnings boost with SBK, whoever you're following. And from one big steeplechase to the next, got the Badger Beer Handicap Chase at Wincanton on Saturday. A race which has got a lot of history to it, and I thought a little bit disappointed with the amount of runners. We've only got 10. Good ground there at Wincanton, which it normally is, but we've got quite a short price favourite here. The Changing Man is 11-4, considering our last race was 5-1 for Phil. I thought that was quite short, so we'll need to see the reasons for that being the price it is. We've got Lord Accord, 7-2, 9-2 for Mufasa. Lord Baddesley is 7-1 for Anti Honeyball. And then who had the winner of this race last year, remastered as 9s. Forward Plan is 12-1, another one for the Honeyball team, risking the ground 14-1. Bigger prices for the rest of them. So Ross, let us know about the sort of makeup of this race, especially with this favourite, the Changing Man, who's coming off the back of wind surgery, 238 days off. Joe Tizard's in good order, but it's a pretty short price for a race that can be very open.
Yeah, I must admit, Jess, all week he was my selection, and I've actually had a small bit on him at Anti-Post. He's a horse I really liked last year, but the price he is now doesn't, to me, seem value, because you are banking on this wind surgery working, because he's been a bit of a soft finisher a couple of times. He first caught my eye first time out over fences at Exeter, finished just behind Stairway Fay, in front of Grey Dawning, ran a really big race. At that point, I didn't think he'd quite gallop through the line strongly over 3 miles, and I was desperate for them to ride him aggressively over sort of 2 mile 4, 2 mile 5, which they didn't really do. And his season never really went on from there. He was disappointing. Yes, he finished second at Uttoxeter last time out, but you'd like to have thought he'd have gone a bit closer than that, really. The wind surgery and the first time tongue tie are the key. If that does help him, and the reason he's not been seeing out his race is not through lack of stamina but through lack of oxygen, he makes plenty of appeal. But the price he is now 11-4 is encouraging me to look elsewhere. So I've come down on two, a win selection in each way. The win, I never thought I'd be uttering these words on the podcast again. Lord Accord for Neil Moore-Holland. We mentioned this horse. I know you did as well. I mentioned him plenty sort of 2-3 years ago when we first started doing the podcast. He was a real favourite, and he's been pretty much awful since finishing runner-up in this race 2 years ago for a mark of 136. And I have to be honest, it disappeared off my radar. Plummeted in the handicap down to a mark of 117. He's won his last two on the spin very impressively, 117 over hurdles, won off 123 last time over course and distance, where he just went out in front, never saw another horse. Now, of course, that's an easier grade of race, but we know he is a classy performer at his best, and if his head's back in the right place and whatever was sort of anchoring him has been sorted, it's up £5 to a mark of 128. He'll love the ground. He goes really well for Richie McClernand. trainer Neil Mulholland, started the season really well. Now, his stats for the last 14 days are only 8%, but you don't need to worry about that. He's been running plenty of horses the last sort of couple of months, and they're all running really well. I think he's got so much going for him off a well handicap. He is a bit short for one that, can throw in some stinkers, but I'm working on the basis that he's in a rich vein of form at the moment, so I wanted to have him on side. And then just another one at an each-way price, albeit short enough each-way price, is Lord Baddesley. He went into my notebook, was rapidly fast finishing second in the Sir Peter O'Sullivan Chase at Newbury over 2 miles 6 last season. Beaten a length, given a pound to Inch House, who's now rated 136. He was crying out for 3 miles. The next time he tried 3 miles was in the Coral Trophy at Kempton, where he was settled towards the rear of the field. And if you remember, that was the race where Al Dancer very, very nearly made all the running, only sort of gave way in the closing stages to Forward Plan, who had also been ridden forward in that race. You just simply couldn't come from off the pace at Kempton on that day. They then dropped him back to 2 mile 4 again at Kempton. He ran well, finishing fourth, doing some really good work, late work. He's got a mark of 129. He's shifted from Chris Gordon to Anthony Honeyball, which is probably an upgrade in terms of the form that Anthony Honeyball's got at the moment, 33% for the last 14 days. I'm sure there's a big handicap chase over this trip in this horse. Whether it's going to be first time up when Anthony Honeyball's got a few runners in the race, I'm not sure. But I wanted to have him on side, and he's probably a horse I'll have on side for most of the season. So it could be the start of a cliff horse, or could be the start of a really nice relationship.
Okay. Also, interesting what you say about the changing man with this wind surgery. I just went quickly on a stable tour. One of the key things that we look at, or we sort of, as you say, view with a bit of caution. But Joe Tizard didn't even mention the wind surgery in his write-up about him. Just said that he thinks he's a bit of a slow burner, and he's a season chaser without really winning a huge amount, and that the Badger Beers would suit him. So not a huge amount to report
Insightful,
out there. Not a huge amount of confidence either. I don't really know what you take away from that. And the fact that they mentioned such a massive part of what has happened to him over the summer, the fact that he's had wind surgery. Maybe it's a shot for nothing, or maybe they just want to keep it under wraps as to why they've gone for it. But as you say, sometimes these stable tours really don't reveal a huge amount. But
you're an owner, Jess. Would you not be pretty miffed if you had a sort of long-term plan that you sort of harnessed through last spring, perhaps was a little bit out of form, and your trainer said to you, tell you what, we'll do this through the summer, and then we'll have a nice target in the autumn, and then went and told all the readers of a website or a paper about it? You wouldn't be too thrilled. So you can't blame the trainers for not saying too much. They're trying to appear helpful with actually telling you as little as they possibly can. So they make nice reading. It's, better than doing the dishes or the ironing, but it's not really going to frame you punting, I don't think.
Yeah, I suppose that there's so much that you don't know has been said with an owner, or not at all, and a rather less than more. But it's strange when you've got such a big paragraph, as you can see with this one, but little status is something that's going to become so obvious when you do look at him on your race card. But we'll see how it goes. He doesn't want to reveal a huge amount there. So interesting insight from Ross when it comes to the Badger Beer. This is a race, TC, where you've got to think the obvious if you're not really a massive fan of this race, or just want to have a look at it from a sort of a neutral perspective. But I always think Paul Nicholls has got a very good record in this, local trainer, but even for us who potentially been living under a bit of a national hunt rock, can't be too far away from the news stories that Paul Nicholls hasn't been in the early form that they expect of him. Can we forget about that? Have we moved on from that yet? Because his form is good. He hasn't rattled off winners left, right and centre, but they're running pretty well for him to have obvious chances on some of the biggest days.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't watched too many jumps races, as already covered on this podcast, and I have seen the news stories about Paul, but at the same time, his horses are running well, as you say. It's not like they're all tailed off and being pulled up like some of Nicky's are at this stage. Look, I have no strong opinion. Ross has given you a much stronger and better opinion than mine, I have to admit, but I won't be having a bet in the race. My token selection, again, is Mofasa for Paul Nicholls. He's won the race, I believe, 11 times. And this horse has always kind of hinted that he's got a stack of promise and ability. He switched to Paul last year, and he won a novice handicap chase at Huntingdon which kind of saw the horse in good light. And you maybe thought, he could go on and improve to become a 140, maybe even a 150 horse if he does take that big leap forward. But it just never really transpired. They thought he had a win problem. I mean, we've already covered Paul Nicholls' horses with win problems, but they actually said that they thought he had one. So I'm willing to buy it. And then Paul said subsequently that he hadn't overcome the wind surgery because he's a light-framed horse, and that's why he didn't run well in the back end of the year. Whatever. I'm happy to buy it again. I just think he's well handicapped. And if Paul Nicholls can get him right first time up, then maybe Mufasa can go close. But I have no real strength in this selection.
Okay, Mufasa at 92. I think we probably can start moving on from that topic conversation. Slow news days when you hear repeatedly that Paul Nicholls' horses aren't in great order at the start of the season. But Mufasa for him, tentative selection from TC. Myself, I'm not going to repeat what Ross has said, but Lord Accord is such a funny one, but a credit to Nilmar Holland. I was there at Wincanton when he won last time, reporting for Racing TV, and I couldn't believe how well he jumped, how far he sort of controlled the race for, and really they've got his confidence back. He's been running over hurdles where he's got a lower mark, and that win at Sedgefield really set him up for a big run at Wincanton in a lesser race than this. And it's just really his jumping, it's really sort of refound its groove again. So if he can go out in the front and try and attempt to make all, which from what I remember, I think last year's winner did something similar, then he can, it could be really difficult to beat against a lot of horses that might not have that fitness on their side. So Lord Accord, plenty in his favour. He's up £5 for that last win, and myself and Ross, both a fan of his. Okay, so that is the Badger Beer Handicap Chase at 3:30 at Wincanton on Saturday, which comes just after the Great Sefton at 2:40. So we've got a lot of jumps action this weekend. We do have that odds and ends of all-weather racing. Chelmsford is on, so I'm sure there will be selections there. And then also have the small matter of Doncaster's final meeting of the year as well. So what can we look forward to? We'll go to TC first, because I'm sure there's plenty in there that you might have found from a flat perspective on November Handicap Day at Doncaster.
Yeah, I did look at Donny. There were a couple of horses that interest me at big prices, but I didn't have enough time to really go through the draw and some trends. So I'm keeping Doncaster under wraps. I will be doing a video that we put on Twitter with my selections for Saturday, and there will be at least one, hopefully, from Doncaster in there. So make sure you check that out on SBK's Twitter page, and my own. I will retweet it. But I've got a nap over jumps, and I've got a next best on the flat at Chelmsford. The nap over jumps. Look, you're probably thinking, why is he napping over jumps? He's just said he's not watched any jumps racing this year. But this is a horse that I loved last season. Go all the way back to October 2023. We did an anti-post kind of jumps preview for the whole year. Horses to follow, horses for each division to keep an eye out on. And one of those for myself was Mr. Megget as a bumper horse, a dark horse for the year. He won first time up by 12 lengths and won on the bridle. I think it was at Carlisle. And then he had a long time off until the spring. And I was thinking, when's this horse going to come out? But he did come out again in a bumper, and he hacked up. And Mr. Megget just has copious amounts of potential. He's a real dark horse for John Joe and AJ O'Neill. Going forward this year, I think he could develop into a super smart hurdler. Now, you do have to put a line through his run in the Aintree Grade 2 bumper in the spring. I loved him for that race. I tipped him on the podcast. And he was travelling as well as anything. But unfortunately, John Joe O'Neill decided to put him right in the middle of a 20-runner field, come around the home turn, horse directly in front of him, stops in his lap. Mr. Megget clips heels, stumbles badly, and immediately put him on the back foot. There's a huge excuse for why he didn't perform that day. I think he would have gone close. He was travelling well at the time. Who knows whether he would have won, whether he would have finished sixth, but he would have been there or thereabouts, and obviously that was a pretty good bumper. Now he comes back into novice hurdles, goes to Aintree again. I really like him in this race. Obviously, you have to take his jumping and fluency on trust, because we've never seen him over obstacles before. But I'm sure he'll be able to jump them, and hopefully he can make a winning start over hurdles in the 12:20. So that's right at the start of the day, Mr. Megget. Now go right to the end of the day on Saturday to the 8:30 at Chelmsford for my next best, which is going to be a horse called Salamanca for Jane Chapel-Hyam. This 3-year-old son of See the Stars, first two outings, he finished second to Poneros, who's now rated 91. Then he finished second to a horse called Endless Victory, rated 102 for Godolphin. Both of those runs very, very promising. They sent him to Lingfield for the Derby trial. He shaped very well. Obviously, there's plenty of good horses in there. The form's worked out well. I'm not going to go through them all, but you can find it if you search on Racing Post. He finished okay in 5th. He was just beaten by better rivals, no excuses. He then had the whole of the summer off, came back in October at Chelmsford over this course and distance and won from the front in a novice event and did so impressively. I like his mark of 95. I think it's very fair on what he's done so far. He's easily a 100 plus horse, and hopefully he can beat his elders first time up in handicap company. So Salamanca is my next best in the 8:30 at Chelmsford.
Okay, thank you. Something to keep you interested throughout the day into the evening with Chelmsford's all-weather fixture. And thank you to TC. Look forward to hearing what you found at Doncaster. Okay, Ross, over to you. I imagine we've got a couple Aintree, maybe Wincanton as well.
No, you missed out Kelso, Jess. Good action north of the border. And the nap comes from there in the 12:42. The Lucinda Russell trained Choose a Copper. Was a pretty solid hurdler, rated 119, but like many of Lucinda's, he had a sort of physical that if he took to jumping a fence, he was going to be a better horse over fences. And I think that's already looking likely. One on Chase debut at Hexham over 2 miles 4, was pretty keen through that, but found plenty when challenged by Dare to Shout, who was the runner-up, and drew away at the end. He stayed really well over that trip. The form looked solid. Dare to Shout came out and won a decent-looking race at Carlisle on his next start. Up £4 now to a mark of 121 from 117, but he'd been as high as 119 over hurdles. Goes up 2 furlongs in trip on a stiffer track. I think that's going to help him defy this rise. I expect it to be a little bit quieter through the early part of the race, not quite so inefficient. I think he's a nice horse in the making. So Choose a Copper in the 12:42 is the nap. And then next best is another novice chaser, actually, come from the 12:55 at Aintree. Haiti Couleur for Rebecca Curtis. I think he should have won at Chepstow on his first start over fences, and that would have been a 3-timer. He won his final 2 starts over hurdles, including at Bangor off 122. Attempted to make all the running under a pretty aggressive Ben Jones ride at Chepstow last time, and just that over the last 3 fences, Ben Jones couldn't find a stride to the third last, lost the revs, was fiddly, lost momentum, pecked at the back of the second last. That was just unfortunate. And then again, going down to the last, there was a brave stride there. And I think Ben Jones slightly, I wouldn't say chickened out, because that's not the right word. They're brave guys, these guys, but he just didn't commit down to it, ended up fiddling, landed awkwardly, lost momentum, and got beaten by Destroy the Evidence, beaten a length, coming right back at the line when the gap was closing as well. Destroy the Evidence actually runs today on Thursday, so form might well be frank by the time you listening to this. But he's went up £3 for that effort, gets an extra 2 furlongs here. Sean Bowen in the saddle. For me, that's a jockey upgrade. I like Sean Bowen, particularly around Aintree. And I think provided that he stepped forward for that first chase start, which I think he will have, he jumped really well in the main. In the 12:55, Haiti Couleur is the next best.
Okay, thank you. And Kelso, I see, starts at 11:10, finishes at 1:52. I'd imagine this is something to do with premierisation, and we're going to see a lot more of this over the winter months. So a very early start if you're jump racing up north at Kelso, and just earlier in general, wherever you are this weekend. So looking forward to some jump action. And as we ease ourselves back in, Ross very much chomping at the bit and has been for some time. So looking forward to seeing how the selections materialise. Don't forget, again, the Great Sefton Handicap Chase is a 25% winnings boost with SBK there, so get involved. But all new SBK users, you can get £40 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. Head to SBK, as TC said, lots of more content, more offers, promotions throughout the course of this weekend. Plenty for you to get involved in. And we'll be back with more insight for jump racing and potentially a bit of all-weather action as well this time next week.